Hello everyone, welcome to another video on the channel and welcome to this week's GT Sport Daily Race C Strategy Guide. It's week number 14 of 2021. We're heading to the north of Italy, Autodromo Nazionale Monza, and we are in the Group 4 machinery. So the details section for this one now on the screen. We have 10 laps to get round. Fuel consumption at times 2, tyre wear fairly low at times 6, and particularly low when we consider we're on a track that's not very heavy on tyres anyway, and we only have the racing hard tyres available. No 2 tyres this week for some strange reason. So we are visiting Autodromo Nazionale Monza, placed in the north of Italy, just outside Milan, world famous track, cathedral of speed, etc, etc, etc. Needs little or no introduction. Now it's a little known fact out there that Autodromo Nazionale Monza actually stands for death by chicane, and I think anyone who's ever played this track in any racing sim out there will accept that that's a fairly apt name for the circuit, or certainly a very apt sub-name for the circuit if you like. Now with those settings, I am not going to waste too much of your time trying to make the strategy for this one sound interesting. We're just going to jump all the way here to lap number 10. We're in the Group 4 Mustang. I like to test the Mustang out for the test car just to see what impact sort of having not too much fuel at the end would place. The Mustang's obviously the heaviest car on fuel consumption in the category, and I was just looking to see if it was going to be a little bit of an advantage being that low in fuel towards the end. And to be perfectly honest with you, it kind of is. Because we're about to set the fastest lap of the race here on the last lap. To be fair, we actually were in race trim and just kind of in race mode as we were going through the laps here, and then we actually did go for the fastest lap at the end, and we're going to set a 1:57.6 to finish, which will just reiterate the fact that the tyres are under very little stress throughout the duration of this one. Tyre wear is only at times 6, we're on the hard tyres, it's the only tyres we've got the option to run, and Monza is not particularly heavy on the tyres anyway. You can take a look at the tyre wear down there in the bottom left hand corner. We're at less than 20% on the worst of them, so I always say the hard tyres have to get to at least 20% before they start to show any kind of particular impact on lap times. There you go, fastest lap at the end, which just reiterates that those tyres are in good shape towards the end. A 19 minutes 47 to finish, so just under the 20-minute mark for daily race C this week. Now I will show you the pit loss here, just so anybody out there who might be new to the game, might not be aware of why you're not going to be making a pit stop in this one, has got that information there on the screen. We've got the non-pit stop run up there in the top right hand corner, but it's all said and done, you lose around about 18 seconds making a pit stop just for the tyres. Obviously fuel is no issue whatsoever, so there is just obviously no way with the settings that we've got now that you're going to make up that pit loss. As I said, a fairly strange decision on PD's part to just give us the hard tyres. So we are going to flesh this video out a little bit by taking a look at some of the cars that I think will be competitive and giving you a comparison of them, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip on track limit penalties for this track as well. So let's move on to taking a look at some of the cars that may well be competitive. Now the test here is we're just going to do 5 laps in each car. We'll get an idea of the lap times on the right hand side there, and I've got the optimal up as well, just to give you an idea as to what sort of optimal time we were getting. I'll give you over the 5 laps, I'm pretty confident I'm going to set a pretty decent sector at some point, and I'll give you an idea of what just sort of lap time the cars are capable of. So first up we've got the Bugatti Veyron. Now this car, when we did a Nations race a wee while ago, was the car of choice. Now I never got on with the Bugatti Veyron very well back then, I have to say, but jumping into it here, it feels like a very unsatisfying car to drive, that's what I'll say, but it is also very safe. You don't have to trouble the apexes too much either to get a lap time out of it. It's very strange. You do have to remember to change gear around about 50 or 60%, but it's definitely capable of very fast lap times. A 1:57.3 is around about the fastest what we did out of all the cars we're going to test here. It's not a car that I'm going to be racing much, I don't think. I just don't enjoy driving it. It's very, very poor on the brakes. Just feels like a big heavy car, and it looks like it's worse on tyre wear compared to some of the other cars we took a look at. Next up we've got the Aston Martin Vantage V8. Now this was a little bit of the joker in the pack for me. I wanted to give this one a try. It's a very familiar car for me, the Aston Martin, whereas the Bugatti Veyron is not, so that could play a factor in here on the lap times. But in terms of lap times, it is very quick. It's certainly competitive with the Veyron, if not quicker. The optimal lap time there, a 1:57.3, I do believe is the quickest that I managed in terms of optimal lap time out of all the cars we took a look at. Now the Aston Martin is absolutely fantastic into the first chicane. For some reason it is very planted in the first part, and then you can get on the throttle extremely early out the second part, and I think that's where a lot of its lap time comes from. It's pretty decent round the rest of the lap, pretty stable car, fairly safe. You do have to be careful of the back end stepping out if you've got the brake balance too far to the rear. I found that to be the same on the Mustang as well, and a lot of these FR cars. You do want to be running the brake balance to the rear, but if you go too far to the rear, they are very tricky under braking into turn 1. And to be perfectly honest with you, pretty tricky under braking for most of the corners. Next up, we've got the Peugeot RCZ. Again, a car I don't have a whole lot of time in. In terms of lap time, it just wasn't producing the lap times in my hands. That could well be, again, just a little bit of inexperience. It's a very odd car. You've got that kind of power on understeer because it's FF, and then it seems to get very loose into the second chicane as well on the rear, which is very unusual for an FF car. Now the optimal there is a 157.7, which suggests it probably is capable of doing lap times in the same region as the Aston Martin and the Veyron. But for me, I didn't enjoy driving it. Quite an unsatisfying car, if I'm perfectly honest with you. Next up, we've got the GTR, the Nissan GTR. So we know the Group 3 Nissan GTR is very competitive with Suzuka. This in week 13. How is its Group 4 brother faring here at Monza? And to be honest with you, pretty good is the answer. In terms of lap time, that 157.4 is maybe not quite representative, because we did actually, you can see there, we picked up a couple of track limits penalties, and we actually set that lap time while picking up 2 track limit penalties. Although they weren't major cuts, I guess we probably gained a couple of tenths because of that, but we are going to finish here with a 157.6, so the Nissan GTR is very much capable of setting a very strong lap on its own right, even without track limits penalties. It may well be a little bit of a dark horse, although you will have to watch those front tyres as they wear. Now, we were mentioning track limits penalties there in the GTR. Let's take a look at the track limits at Monza. Now, Monza can be a little bit difficult in terms of track limits, particularly into the second chicane as we are approaching here, but maybe I can give you a little bit of a tip, a little bit of a secret. I'm not entirely sure how many people know this. So we have deliberately cut the second apex there at the second chicane, and we rightly pick up a 1 second penalty. Now we're going to be serving that down the straight towards Ascari, which is going to be very costly for our lap time. Now the question is, do you actually have to serve that penalty? Can you do something to avoid getting it? So we're going to do the exact same thing here on a later lap. We'll cut the second chicane, but we'll come off the throttle quite heavily, then accelerate, and you can see as we come down to Lesmo number 1, we get no penalty. So just giving it a reasonably big lift as we realise we've actually cut the track. The game recognises we've gone slower, doesn't give us a penalty. Now let's see if we can do that again. We are going to cut the corner here again, big lift off the throttle. Now it seems to be around about the end of that curve where the game decides whether you're getting a penalty or not. Into Lesmo number 1, no penalty this time. Now we do, just to sort of demonstrate that it is the game calculating whether you have lifted off enough, let's cut the corner here, lift off a little bit, but then get straight back on the throttle, and somewhat bizarrely, rather than a 1 second penalty, we get a half second penalty. So what the game has done here has recognised that we have lifted off a little bit, but it doesn't think we've lifted off enough to not get a penalty, but it goes, you have lifted off a little bit, I'm not going to give you as severe a penalty. So it's just something I've learned over the years playing the game, that the track limit system can be a little bit more complex than people give it credit for. Now it's extremely difficult to do this in a race situation because you do get that adrenaline pumping, you tend not to sort of think about doing things like lifting off as you come out of corners, but it's maybe something you can bear in mind, something you can maybe kind of get used to. You'll certainly save yourself a little bit of time. You're better off just lifting off the throttle, not getting the penalty. Will cost you a little bit of time, but I suspect it'll cost you less time than serving a 1 second penalty down the straight just a little bit later on. So all in all, a rather uninspired race in terms of settings here from PD. Now don't get me wrong, Group 4 around Monza is going to be pretty good fun anyway. Monza has always got a little bit of drama, and that's what people like. You can't deny there's going to be a little bit of excitement in this one. It's going to be a slipstream fest, there's going to be lots of side-by-side action, lots of overtaking, lots of punts, crashes, moaning in the post-race chat, etc. Now, for me, the approach for this one is you need to try and race sensibly. Get a little bit of slipstream discipline going on. Don't go for half-hearted moves into turn number 1 in the second chicane. Just try and work with the drivers around you until the last couple of laps, then sort the race out from that point. That would be my approach, that will be my approach for this one. Easier said than done, of course, because you're going to have to rely on other drivers around you. But make the most of it as you can. As I said, not the most inspiring race in terms of settings, but as I said, just try and make the most of what it is. It's Group 4 at Monza. There is fun to be had there. Now, it is a rather strange decision on PD's part why they've gone for this settings. For me, if we were wanting to do Group 4 at Monza, I would maybe have tried to create a little bit of a story there. And what more of a story could you have than having two iconic Italian manufacturers duking it out at an iconic Italian track? So I would have kind of done what they've done for the Nations race this week, where it's just the Corvette and the Porsche that's available, and I would just have made it the Ferrari and the Lamborghini from Group 4 available. But an interesting race. The Lamborghini would have the advantage in the top end speed, but I think the Ferrari would then come back in the handling sections and with the tyre wear towards the end. And I think it would just give the race a little bit of a story. It makes things a little bit more interesting in my mind anyway. Other suggestions they could have done though is maybe just made the fuel a factor. We've had a fuel saving race for a long time now in daily race C. Seems to be something they're actively avoiding, but if they're going to sort of force us into a no stop, at least give us something else to think about along the course of the race. Now I know that's probably not that popular opinion. Fuel saving races seem to be something that people are dead against, so maybe that's why we don't get them. Maybe PD have taken that on board. And other than that, why did they not have the two tyres that we normally get? I'm not entirely sure what the thinking was behind that. They changed the pit stops, which I think was a good thing. I think it was the right move, but it then does require them to then set the race up in a particular way so that pit stop actually becomes usable. Anyway, we've rambled on enough here. Hopefully this video has been useful in some way, shape or form. Despite the lacklustre settings, despite the fact it's a boring no stop, we will manage to get some fun out of this one, I'm sure. We'll try and use some different cars, some unusual cars over the course of the week. Now I am working until Thursday, so I don't think we can get a live stream out in this one until maybe Friday, so do join me for that one if you can. I look forward to seeing you there if you can make it. Please do hit that like button, please do hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And with that, all that's left to say is thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you on the next one. Goodbye now.